welcome back to season 2 of He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I am your host, Sal, here with my co-host, Monty. What's going on, man?
We're fucking back, man. We're back. Sorry for everybody who's listening with children. We are back.
You shouldn't be listening to us as children. You're a terrible parent if you're doing that.
But we are back. We have an interior defensive line episode. That was our second episode last year. We just had week 0 of college football. We have week 1 coming up with lots of fun, games. You got what? You have USC. Who's USC playing? USC versus we got Florida, Miami, USC. I'm blanking, but yeah, great games. LSU, whatever.
The big one. Yeah, the big one is Notre Dame and A&M.
Yeah,
that's the big one, and we'll get to that stuff. But it's been a long ride, man, since the beginning of last season when we just started this thing off, all the way through this. It's been fun with all the people who've joined us, all the way through the exhausting draft process. And now, so we're just waiting for this to be back. So college football is back. Cancel He's a Giant. Thank you, Jabri. We appreciate that. But we are back, and we are going in order of a group that we think you guys would like, because this is a group of players and prospects that are going to be really important, I think, to the Giants coming up. So just like we did wide receiver last year, and we foretold the selection of Malik Naber in our very first episode, we're gonna maybe try to manifest some cool stuff today. So let me just fix this thing. Hold on. My thing is going nuts here. All right. So before we get into our first episode, which is about interior D-line, we got to talk a little bit about the Giants, Monty. So season's upon us, final cut downs, amazing active waiver wire for Joe Shane.
Yeah,
but that wasn't the big news, right? What's the big news?
His buddy screwed him with I'll tick all the corners. But big news. We finally have a number for Bryce Ford Wheaton. No, number 88. But we have a number for Malik Naber. There's a lot of speculation. He was wearing 9 all through it, which obviously was already taken by Grant Gano, who made it pretty clear he wasn't going to give it up. Was he going to get Jamie Gillen's number 6 because he wanted a single digit? Was he going to get Drew Lock's number 2? Nope, none of the above. He takes Pat Flattery. Ray Flattery. Sorry, I'm thinking of the. I don't know who I'm thinking of, but that's somebody. Ray Flattery, Giant great, unretires his number. Their family approves it, and now Malik Naber is wearing number 1,
as he should be. Unretire them all. I mean, if you want to make a case to unretire all but a few, the only 3 that should not be unretired are the greatest Giant ever, 56, the greatest quarterback Giant ever, 10, and the sacks leader, who was a leader on 1 Super Bowl team,
but 2 that went.
2 that went. Yep, and 92, and that's it. Leave it alone. Like, nobody else but those 3, in my opinion, deserve to have their numbers forever retired. And I'll make an argument you could even let those numbers go too, man.
Yeah.
Numbers are numbers. But I'm with you. Like, if you're going to protect numbers, protect the all-time greats, the guys who have it all. Super Bowl trophies, legendary status, Hall of Fame. That's 3 of them.
Thank you, C-Web. That's what it was. So there's our O-line coach. I knew I recognized Pat Flattery somewhere. That's my bad.
Thank you. Yes. You were thinking about famous Giant Flaherty.
Yeah, very famous Pat Flattery.
Right. But I love it, man. I love it. Naber in 1 just looks right. It's awesome. That kid deserves a great number. I know he's a rookie. He hasn't played ball. People are all upset about it. I don't give a goddamn. The kid looks great in 1. He looks like he's going to be a great player. Let him play in 1.
Yeah, man. I mean, first of all, if the family says it's okay, nobody should be bothered to buy it. That's the end of it. People can be bothered by, I have the same take as you. People can be bothered by my take that we should unretire all these. I think way back in the day, they were way too liberal with retiring these. And then, like, look, even Mason just brought up, like, Emma Tunnel's not even retired. He's
exactly.
The first Black Hall of Famer in NFL history. He played for the Giants for over 10 years. He coached for the Giants for over 10 years. and his number isn't retired. So what standard are we holding on to? There was clearly not a good process here. I know people hold on to Frank Gifford. I mean, NFL MVP. I get all that type of stuff, but he's in the Hall of Fame as a coach for the Redskins. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. Like, that's where you got to accept it. So, like, look, I'm not saying that these guys aren't deserving, but I think that if you just go, if you're gonna do it, cut it off at the new Super Bowl era. And I'll also say, if you're not in the Hall of Fame, you shouldn't have your number retired. To me, it goes Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame, number retirement. You got to get those first two to get your number retired. That's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I don't want to belabor the point, but I would say this. Good on the Giants organization, because this has been a conversation amongst the fan base that we shouldn't have all these numbers retired. We should let them go and let these players play. Good on the Giants fan base, the Giants organization, for doing the right thing here, I think, in my opinion, and moving with the times. It's the first thing they've done in a long time that makes me feel like they're actually paying attention to what their fans want and moving with the times. They want the fans want their young stars to have exciting numbers that they really enjoy. That's just the reality, and I think the Giants are getting it. So we don't often give them a ton of credit. We're often the ones who are part of the group that's very critical of a lot of things they do, but here they deserve a lot of credit, in my opinion.
For sure.
Good for the Giants.
Because they're never going to take as extreme of an approach as I'm laying out here, but just to let these kids reach out to the family and like help them with that reach out and, try to get their blessing. I mean, they're not going to just straight up unretire them like we want. So I mean, that's a big step of just, moving forward and setting that precedent.
Yep. Not much talk about the season. That's next week. We'll go over that as the season's upon us. This is sort of the off week, the pre-bye week, if you will. So I think we're just about ready to kick this off. You want to get going with our positional reviews?
Yeah, man. Let's jump into it, especially if we have anybody who's not Giants fans in here, only jumping in for the reviews. We won't keep them too long in Giants.
Let's give them a little preview of how we do this. I mean, for those who were here last year, we did our top 5 by position group, 1 through 5. We didn't build up to 1. We started at the top, and then we would give you 1 or 2 guys who we thought were not quite top 5, but they were what we called my guys or sleepers, however you want to look at it, guys to pay attention to. And this year we did a little bit more than what we did last year in terms of last year we just did a lot of research on the players, watch what we could. This year we really kind of dove a lot. We got a lot more access to game film, dove into several games with these kids, looked at their analytics, their data, the whole bit, and we were able to go through it. And we created what we feel is a little bit more of an objective scoring system. So Monte and I generated a grading system. We'll show. Do you have a screen grab of it by any chance? Or
yeah, I can pull it up. I have.
Yeah. So what we did was, one of our goals for this year was to have a more formal evaluation process, and there are guys out there like Bill Walsh, legendary coach, Matt Miller, who've published books, articles, essays on how they go about evaluating each position and grading each position. So I don't know if we can show it without showing the player, but there are certain features of each position that we have put into an organized system of grading, and each position and each component for that position is going to get a score of 1 through 5. And what that basically means is 1 is essentially just not an NFL player, right? That's not a good player or not a good trait for that player. 2 is, how do we classify that? As basically like a backup?
Yeah, basically an NFL backup.
3 is an average NFL starter, essentially. 4 is an above average NFL starter, and 5 is an all-pro / Pro Bowler. And so each component thing is going to have that grading 1 to 5 system, and we'll lay it out for each player, and then we have a composite grade. We have those grades, and then we have a couple of extra. We threw in 3 grades that are unique to what we're doing for each player in each category. The first grade is going to be the Giants grade. So this is Giants fit grade. So they could be a great prospect, but if they don't fit the Giants' current need, the Giants' current scheme, or their positional personnel, we'll grade them a little lower than they would be otherwise. The second grade is going to be on potential or upside. So they're guys who are not going to score well in how they put together film in college, but we can see the traits and potential, and they'll get a grade on that. And the third grade, the third unique grade, which is our favorite grade, I don't know if he's in here or not, is the goon grade. for our buddy Big Blue Goon.
Trademark Big Blue Goon.
Trademark Big Blue Goon. We have a goon factor that we attribute to every player. So this is grading how much they try to strive to be a sociopath, and how much they play like a sociopath, like a real ass goon, 1 to 5. So we're gonna put that up together for you guys. Anyway, you want to kick off the interior defensive line?
Yeah. Let's jump into it. Here, real quick, I want to show something to people real quick before we do that. Just adding context to what you were talking about.
Yes, Jabri, they are real gooners. At least some of them are.
So this is just what we looked at. This is from How I Evaluate Each Position from Bill Walsh, great legendary coach. I'll just read it for our audio listeners here. Basically,
before you do,
zoom in.
Zoom in on the last comment. You'll see it. And that's the kind of goon factor we're looking for, folks. All right, show them the Bill Walsh thing. Let's move on.
Yeah. So right here we got Bill Walsh, and essentially what he's looking for in a defensive tackle. It's a little bit dated with some stuff. You can see that kind of with the ideal size here. I'm sure that changed a little bit.
I know what it means, Nunu. I've been hanging out with you guys long enough. I don't care. I know. Good.
But he said, must have the girth, strength, last to hold off the ground and step into the tackles, block without being knocked off the line of scrimmage. Quick, strong hands, grab and pull are critical. This is common with great tackles. The hands and arms upper body strength and the feet. To take quick advantage of a moving man, just getting him off balance. You're looking for somebody who can move down the line of scrimmage and make a tackle. Pursuing a ball carrier, that would be lateral quickness in a short area. Being able to underway and move through over or through people. If you get knocked off the line or get sideways or knocked off balance, you cannot play this position. You must be able to work your way through people. This kind of strength is a must. The best defensive tackle, move the offensive guard back into the quarterback so they won't nearly have as many sacks as others, but if they can move a guard back into the quarterback, then the quarterback has to avoid his own lineman as if you were a pass rusher before he throws the ball. So this is a key ability. So we took that, we pulled some key traits based off of some of that, and then kind of added our own evaluation into that. So we'll talk about some of that when we get into these guys, but just to give you guys an idea of what we looked at, that was one of the main things that we based it off of. With that said, let's get into it. Yeah.
All right. So why don't you introduce our number 1 interior defensive line prospect of the upcoming draft?
Yeah. So our number 1, and quite frankly, it was not even close. Like not even a little bit close. Mason Graham, interior defensive lineman out of Michigan. 6'3", 320 pounds. He was a 4-star recruit. He's a true junior. He was a second-team All-American last year, and he won the Rose Bowl Defensive MVP. Some crazy PFF numbers. He had a 90 PFF score, 87.8 run defense, 84.8 run defense. He did have 15.4% missed tackle percentage. That's a little bit higher than you're looking for. Ideally, want that down underneath 10. 16.4 pass rush win rate, insanely high. You want that, in the high, like not 8, 9, ideally for an interior defensive lineman. Being in 16, that's like an elite edge rusher type numbers. Matched that with 36 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 1 pass defended, and 1 forced fumble. Just give you a little quick rundown of what I thought he was. I thought he was an incredible athlete. You could see him within that offense that Michigan ran, where they ran a ton of stunts. You could be a guy, he'd be coming all the way from the C gap and could shoot the A gap. Like he could come totally across those players and be in, get by you like that. He has that incredible athleticism to do something like that, or even drop back into coverage, which again, when you're looking at a guy like Shane Bowen, who, he runs a lot of stunts, he'll randomly throw anybody into coverage, those type of things, they did at Michigan, and he did extremely well. Like all the Michigan players we talked about last year, if you guys listened, he's really well coached. That was a trend last year, and that's something that, carried on with Mason Graham. He's a really well coached player, plays with great leverage. He hand fights exceptionally well. And he's really good at getting off the line quickly, getting his arm extended and making sure the offensive linemen don't get in on him. I on the other side of it, I still think he kind of lacks some of that elite pushback strength. I don't think he collapses the pocket extremely well. I think he still needs to work on having more of a pass rush plan. I think he improvs very well and plays to what the offensive linemen are showing him decently well, but he doesn't kind of have that trump card to get by these offensive linemen to really be an elite pass rusher, I think, as top of even though he is a really good football player. So that's some of kind of like my initial thoughts on him. I know you were a huge fan of him, Sal. So tell us about some of your thoughts on Mason Graham.
He's just really good at everything. And I think that's the key with Graham. So just background, Mason Graham is everything you want and a prototype to become an interior defensive lineman. In high school, the kid was an all-world wrestler. He played offensive line and he played defensive line. He was a two-way player and was a wrestler. So he understands the line of scrimmage very well. He understands leverage. You want to see that. You can start with the negatives. I think the pushback power is a thing. I think some of that has to do with his arm length, which is a little bit on the maybe slightly lower than average, but that's kind of it. But everything else about this guy is absolutely freakish in terms of what he can do to impact the game. You watch him on film and he just stands out, right? I mean, it's amazing how much he's hopping around. For a guy his size, you see him with the stunts and the twists running all over the line, sometimes lining up as a stand-up edge rusher and moving all the way around the line of scrimmage. His speed and his quickness is just jolting. He just shoots those gaps right away before the interior lineman or whichever lineman he's lining up against has a chance to react a lot of times. And it's not just speed. You see him win with his hands. And he has kind of a go-to move to push back. Now, I agree. He doesn't get like that. When Monty's talking about pushback, he's talking about get his hands into the chest of the interior lineman and drive him all the way back to the quarterback.
Correct.
That's what we mean when we refer to pushback. And you're going to hear that term again today a little bit more. But what he does do to get into the backfield is he extends often his left arm. And he gets that left arm out. He really gets it under the shoulder of the lineman. And he really has these guys lose balance. And he goes right past them. So he finds different ways to win. He twists, he stunts, as you mentioned. He's incredibly quick. He has a missed tackle rate that's on the high side, but it doesn't show up on film. What you see on film is a guy who's always getting to the ball carrier. Like wherever that ball's going, he's chasing them down and he's crashing on them. I would agree that if you're going to say elite difference maker, it's hard to be that as an interior defensive lineman, right?
Yeah.
We're spoiled. We have a freak of all freaks as our interior defensive lineman who's like at a Hall of Fame pace right now for what he's doing from the inside. But most guys don't do things like that. 16% pass rush win rate is ridiculously high for an interior guy, right? The next highest I could think of in recent like scouting memory was actually Leonard Taylor last year, who was around 13% or something like that. By the way, the Jets kept him. Should have listened to us. Anyway, so the guy's just really good. He's a plug and play day one starter, 3 tech. Just thinking about him next to Dexter Lawrence, where he doesn't get double teamed, is terrifying. If you stick this guy next to Lawrence, if that's what ends up happening in the draft, I have no idea how an offensive line can block those two guys. It's going to be devastating from the interior. And then you've got Kayvon and Burns from the outside. If you want real dreams about how to devastate other teams, this is one that you want. You want Mason Graham standing next to Dexter Lawrence. Now, the problem is you can make an argument he's the best player in the draft, period. Even though he's interior defensive lineman. I mean, I think pound for pound right now, he might be the best player in the draft.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying.
The other candidates are his teammate Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, and really obviously Travis Hunter, the cornerback / wide receiver out of Colorado. But those are like the elite athletes and player prospects of this class.
Will Johnson from LSU, you can make an argument, or not Will Johnson, sorry, Will
Campbell.
Campbell, thank you. I'm messing up a lot of names right now.
So he's going to be a top tier draft pick. So again, if you're going to take him, you have to kind of assuming he plays at the level he did last year, you're going to have a top 10 pick, probably a top 5 pick to get this guy. And if you have a top 5 pick and you're the Giants, what does the world look like at that point? Are you taking defensive lineman? I don't know. It was a lot easier to project them taking Malik Nabers at this time last year than it is to project them taking Mason Graham. But listen, I won't be upset if Mason Graham is the guy they walk away with on draft night. I would be thrilled. He is a spectacular player.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'm still hesitant about with Mason Grant. I mean, he's obviously a fantastic football player. I have a couple more things I want to touch on with him, but I'm clearly, I'm grading him on the thought that this guy might be a top 5 pick as an interior defensive lineman, and I just want to see a little bit more of the ability to kind of like take over a football game. And he does it at times, but I kind of want to see it a little bit more consistently. It's a lot to ask for a guy from this position, but if you're gonna go that high at interior defensive line position, I want to see him take that next step this year. And I think he can. He was a true sophomore last year, and he played out of this world. So I expect him to take another step. And
he took over 2 games last year.
And they're at the most important games of the year.
He took over the national semifinal, and he took over the national final championship game.
Yep.
Like that's where he saved his best for the biggest moments against the best teams. And I think that's worth a lot in my mind.
Yeah. So, a couple more notes I want to say on him. I mentioned that he doesn't have the pushback, but I'll say, ways that he combats that. I think, when they run those twists and things like that, he really is able to use like a speed to power approach where he pops around once he gets moving. If he comes in with his, athleticism, he can get an initial pop on these guys and get them moving back. He's not necessarily doing that, head to head on a guy defensive line, but if he can use a speed to power type rush, he can get these guys moving back. I'll say that the other thing I really wanted to add, what did I have here? This is something I really noticed. I don't know if you noticed this, but I'm assuming you did. When he was able to, shed a defensive lineman, the speed that he came off of that block with is insane. I couldn't believe how fast he could accelerate coming off of that block. The second he got caught loose, he was like a rocket towards the quarterback.
I agree. He was awesome. Anyway, you want to give us our grades now since we're doing this grading system?
Sure. So let's get into it. So do you want to just go? Should we just go one by one on the categories and give my grade and your grade?
Yeah, and we give a composite average grade, which does not include Giants fit potential and goon grade. Those are very personal items. But but other than that, we have a composite grade. So how did you grade his strength on that 1 to 5 scale?
So I gave him a 4. I felt that he could hold the ground. On my notes is that he was an immovable object. I mean, when he was there, you weren't moving him very well. He found ways to get pushed back, but to be a 5, to be an all-pro, Pro Bowler type strength, for me, you got to have that pocket, pushing ability. So he was above average. I would say he would come in right away to the NFL and be, above average strength. But
I gave him the same score. I gave him a 4 for that. I think there's work he can do to get a little bit stronger. But right away, he looks like an above average NFL tackle, defensive tackle with his strength. Leverage,
I gave him a 4. I thought he had really good leverage, but I think just back, watching tape of him next to Chris Jenkins, for example. Chris Jenkins probably a guy I would have gave 5 if we did this last year. Some of the best leverage I've ever seen. Tick below that. Really good. He'd play a little high sometimes, but really, really good leverage, like 90% of the time.
I also gave him a 4. I agree. A little bit less than Chris Jenkins, but you see that wrestler in him with the leverage. So I definitely gave him a 4 there.
For
above
sure.
average.
And he played well from like his leverage, which is part of this. It's not just, how low you get. He used his leverage to work offensive linemen, which, is part of this.
Jump.
All right. So jump, when we're saying jump, we mean, you like jump off the snap out of their stance, timing the snap, all that type of stuff. I gave him a 3. I thought, average defensive lineman. Sometimes he got down a little bit late into his stance that caused him, to be a little bit late on it. Sometimes he had really good jumps. Definitely had 4, maybe even a 5 once in a while in there. But for the most part, just kind of average jump.
Yeah, I gave him a 3 also. I think some of that was just some of the complexity of the play design. You would see that he's always looking back to see what play call there is and what his responsibility was. He dropped into coverage and did so many crazy things at the line of scrimmage that, like, I think he was tasked with a lot, but I can't give him higher than a 3 on that. But I think that's coachable. Um, quickness. I think we both gave him 5s here, and that's
Yeah,
pretty
it's an
obvious on his tape. Nothing to talk about there. He's
easy 5.
spectacularly quick.
Yeah, one of the best lateral quickness I've ever seen from an interior defensive lineman.
Hands, we have a little bit of a discrepancy.
Yeah, so I had a 4 on hands. I above average. So, something that makes some of this hard is all these kind of play into each other. Like, leverage can play into strength, jump can play into certain things, and part of that with this is hands is you could use that as his quickness with his or jump with his pass rush ability. And I'm trying to find a way to incorporate how good he is with his hands as a pass rusher and how good he is with just, placement in the run game and, hand battling and stuff like that. I felt he didn't have, like an incredible rip or spin move or really a great counter move. I thought he just, was really good at hand fighter, but he didn't have that great pass rush move, so I knocked him down just a little bit for that.
I gave him a 5. I thought I saw enough from his hands that I saw some pretty elite characteristics there in terms of hand usage. Both in, even though he didn't have a lot of counter moves, you're right. The grip strength was elite, and I'm incorporating that in the hand usage because that's part of his game. Or the push pull is insane with this guy. Like once he gets his hands on you inside the chest, like it was over. Like offensive lineman had no shot. The grip strength, the rip move, the swim move, like his counters with his hands, I thought were pretty damn high level for a true sophomore. So I'm projecting a little bit here, but I gave him a 5.
Yeah, I understand where you come from 5. Some of that stuff was super elite. He really good at just generally keeping the offensive lineman's hands off him when he was doing when he's working off the edge and things like that. He was able to completely, hand fight with these guys and win. So I definitely get where you're coming from, giving 5, but I still think that there's some improvement there as a pass rusher where he can improve his hands. So that's why I gave him a 4. Next one. Balance.
We both gave him a 4. I think he's a very balanced player. So what we're talking about here is, the ability to maintain a good anchor, not get taken to the ground by linemen, maintain, and part of what Bill Walsh was talking about, which is as these guys are getting bounced around the interior of the line, are they going to get washed and tossed to the ground, or are they able to maintain balance, maintain a strong anchor, and actually move along the line to plug gaps? He does an outstanding job of that. I don't think it was elite, but I thought it was above average. So I think a 4 was about where I had him.
Yeah, like I saw him get knocked over, but everybody gets knocked over. But for the most part, I saw him, do what you're looking for from a defensive lineman in that regard.
The last 3 are quick and easy. The Giants fit, we both have him at a 5. He's perfect for the Giants.
The perfect fit for what we're looking for. Him next to Dexter Lawrence would be incredible. You see how often Mason Graham is double teamed. That would not happen on the Giants, and he can do exactly what Shane Bowen's looking for. The perfect fit for the Giants.
Potential, you had him at a 5. I had him at a 4. I see why you gave him a 5 just based on how athletic he is. I put him at a 4 only because I think he's already so well coached. I don't know how much higher this guy can go, but it's still high. Goon grade. What'd you think?
So I gave him a 4 because I didn't see that he was like, I don't know. I didn't see that killer quite instinct in him. Like he was a very just sound football player. I didn't see that want to rip your head off. I honestly originally gave him a 3, but then I heard he was a state champion wrestler. I had to knock him up to a 4. So, but I have a 5 in here, and we'll talk about him. But I gave him a 4 in the Goon grade.
I gave him a 5, based purely on how I saw this guy play in the last couple of games. Second to last game against Alabama, he looks like he wants to decapitate Jalen Milroe. That's a goon right there. So I gave him a 5. I see real psychopathic potential in this guy, so I gave him a 5. Bottom line, he's a phenomenal prospect, probably top 5 to 10. If the Giants get him, he's perfect. But we're talking about a top pick, top pick in the NFL draft. I think easily number 1 in this class. barring something very strange happening this year.
Yep. And so my composite grade was a 4. Yours was a 4.2. And you're really kind of saying what they are today. So basically, you're saying he would most likely come into the NFL and be an above average defensive lineman today, which is pretty crazy.
Absolutely. All right, you want to go to number 2? This is where things are going to get very annoying for people. It's going to piss people off here.
Yeah, give him your 2 with my 2 as
right.
well. But you're a big fan of this guy.
So we agreed on this. Our number
Mhm.
2 defensive lineman and interior defensive lineman in this class is not what you guys think, and it's going to aggravate some people. Our number 2 interior defensive lineman in this class is Howard Cross Jr. from the University of Notre Dame. Howard Cross Jr., the son of Giants legend Howard Cross, the 13-year tight end, 6'1", 288-pound, 4-star recruit. He's a 6th-year senior, so he's an older prospect. He was an All-American in the preseason this year. He was a second-team All-American last year. He had an 89.8 PFF overall grade, high grade, 83.3 run defense grade, 89.8 pass rush grade, 8% missed tackle rate, nice and low, 13.3% pass rush win rate. And the second highest wins above replacement, that's a new PFF metric in the entire IDL class, second behind only Mason Graham. He had 66 tackles, 7 for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles. He's another guy who was a high school champion wrestler. And like I said, he was a New Jersey State champion. Not getting as much love as you would think. Now, keep in mind, those numbers I gave you, again, we said those are kind of elite numbers. 6'1", 288. He did that playing nose tackle last year. Again, he played nose tackle at Notre Dame last year, the majority of his snaps, and he put up that kind of production. So there's 2 ways to interpret that. You can say that benefited him being, lined up against centers, or you can say he was playing way out of position, undersized, and still generated that kind of production. I tend to think the latter. So what does he play like? He plays like a bat out of hell is what he plays like.
Yeah.
Every single play, the dude plays like it's his last play ever. Hair on fire, quick out of his stance. Immediately, like he jumps the snap almost where the damn ball's out of the center's hand, but somehow doesn't get called offsides. He can make guys miss they can whiff completely. You made a good comment here, like on their block, because he's so quick out of the stance. They'll whiff. He'll go right past them. He'll one gap right past them. He has incredibly good pop on contact. When he hits you, boom, you hear it. It's a loud snap and the play is over. He works to get into the backfield, constantly moving. His legs are always churning. His arms are always fighting. There's never any wasted moments in this guy's reps. He's a great one gapper, as I mentioned. He has a lot of pass rush chops. He has a plan as a pass rusher. He doesn't just go out there and have one move. He will push, pull. He'll go speed to power, and if he gets hit with a block, he will counter it. He has spin moves. He has swim moves. He has chops. He has a huge arsenal already. He has strong hands, not elite, but very strong. Knows how to use them. He has a very strong swim move when he needs to counter. And the biggest thing you see when you watch Howard Cross is he knows what the fuck he's doing out there on every play. He plays the game like he's been playing it for 30 years. He has an incredibly high IQ. He understands where the ball carrier is. He understands what play is happening in front of him. He anticipates plays well. He looks like a captain who knows exactly what to do on every play. So while when you watch him, no elite trait pops out, right? Even though I'm saying all these great things, you'll watch him. There's nothing that looks elite, but he wins every single rep, which is remarkable when you think about it. He just constantly wins. He finds ways to get his job done on every play. I think that's some of that is NFL bloodlines, right? Just being a guy who's been around football his whole life, but he knows what he's doing out there. There are some cons. He's not a guy his size. He's 6'1", 280. He's not going to eat double teams and hold his ground as well as some of these other guys that we're going to mention. He does lose gap integrity at times. He's not great in the run game. He's not a liability, but he's not a dominant force. If you're looking for a guy who just eats blocks and destroys the run game, and he plays with good leverage, but there are times where you can see him lose it. To me, and you put this down in the comments as well. Bottom line is, this guy is just a gamer. Plays with a high motor. He's a problem. He's a 3-down lineman, and I think he's reliable in the run game and the pass game. But I think his pass rushing skill and his pass rushing chops and his plan out there as a 3 tech who won't have to eat the double teams that he has to eat as nose tackle is going to be a real high impact player in the NFL. So I love him. I have him number 2. I know nobody else will have him number 2 except for us, but we're grading on what we saw, not what the consensus is, not what the bias is. We just watched these guys and said, this is who we like. So I'll leave it at that. Give me your thoughts on Howard Cross, Monty.
Yeah, man. I mean, you nailed it. You hit on all the main points here. I mean, the biggest negative I think people are going to give to him is 6'1", 288. I mean, you look at a guy like Mekhi Wingo and how much a guy like that fell in the draft. He was a fantastic football player at LSU, much better player than Mason Graham was last year. But Mason Graham went in the second round because he's 6'6" and was a 5-star recruit. You know, that is not Howard Cross. Howard Cross is 6'1", 288. He's a 6-year football player. Like, you know, there's less room for development at that point for a guy like that. All that type of stuff's going to hurt him in the draft process, but he is a fantastic football player. He like, we'll get into what we gave these guys, but he has one of the best jumps I've ever seen. I want to see real quickly. Let's see if I can get this. I had a, let's see if I can just do real quick if it lets me. No, it's not. All right, I'll post. Go to He's a Giant Twitter after this. Whenever you get a chance, I'll post the clip on there. There's one clip, actually happened twice versus USC, where Howard Cross literally beat the USC center before he was able to like get out of his stance from snapping it and block him. He was already passing. Happened twice versus USC. He's that quick out of his stance. He gave these guys a hard time. I was talking to Sal about this a little bit before the show. You know, we talked about a guy like Chop Robinson last year, about how this guy, we call him the water boy because he was relentless.
Now I understand what you mean by that. Okay, now I get it. Okay.
Yeah, he was relentless. He would there was no give in his effort. He would not give up until the whistle was blown. He keeps fighting, keeps trying to counter, does whatever he can. He doesn't. A lot of these interior defensive linemen, they kind of accept when they've been beat. They're like, you know what? I clogged the gap. You know, that's my job. I took my lane. That's okay. I did my job. That is not Howard Cross. Howard Cross, he plays on his hair or fire for better or for worse. And, you know, Sal said it, like, you know, sometimes that is for worse because, you know, he loses some lane integrity because if he can't get in, if he gets stonewalled, he's looping around to try to make a play. But this guy, even though, you know, you would think that messes up, he has such high football IQ that he seems to never really get burned by it. He always seems to know exactly. 1 second, I gotta make sure my charger's plugged in. He seems to know exactly where these guys are at all times. His football IQ is really one of his superpowers on top of his get off. And it's not something that we had in our list was to have anything about IQ or instincts. Maybe it should have, but you know, that is something I would have gave him a 5 on if we had it. You know, it is high level. You know, it comes from the football lineage, I'm sure. It comes from being a 6-year football player. But I love this guy. He's a little bit undersized, but the effort, the well coached, the talent, like he has everything. He's just a little bit small.
Yep. And let's, in the interest of time, because we got a few more guys to get through, let's just rip through these scores really quickly because I think we've already kind of talked about the components of it.
Yep.
But let's just rip through the scores and then we'll give our composite scores. So why don't you tell us your score numbers and I'll give you mine.
Sure. So strength, I gave him a 3.
I gave him a 3.
Leverage, I gave him a 3.
I gave him a 3.
Jump, I gave him a 5.
I gave him a 5.
Quickness, I gave him a 4.
I gave him a 4.
Hands, I gave him a 4.
I also gave him a 4.
Balance, I gave him a 2.
I gave him a 3. I thought he was a little bit more balanced than you gave him credit for. The composite score you got was
3.5.
I got a 3.7. So we're both landing at at somewhere between an average to an above average NFL starter.
Yeah, I mean,
Right now.
part of that was probably that, we watched different games. I saw Cross fall a couple times. I saw him get pancaked. So the more I watched, the more that might change. But off of one game, I gave him a 2 there.
Watch him against Ohio State and the horrible things he does to their O line, and you
We
might
got
change your line.
yeah. I mean,
we both watch USC. I agree. He destroyed USC, but watch him against Ohio State and what he did to that O line.
yeah. I mean, just one thing to keep in mind here with all this is, it's a very early review here, so these will continue to change as we go over time. But yeah. So let's get these last 3. So Giants fit, I had a 4. What about you?
I had a 5.
So the only reason I did a 4 opposed to a 5 is honestly because we had a guy who was a true 5 already, and I kind of was grading him up against Mason Graham. And Mason Graham, on top of being a great fit, he had the size that we look for, and he already kind of runs what Shane Bowen likes to do. So I think Howard Cross is a really good fit, but just not a perfect fit.
That's fair.
Potential, I gave him a 4.
I actually gave him a lower score here. I gave him a 3. I only put it lower than 4 because I already think this is a guy who's already well coached, and I think there are some physical limitations you're going to run into with Howard Cross that may not project as high as some of the other guys we're going to go over. So I put it at a sort of an average NFL potential.
Okay, no, that's fair, I think. And then Goon grade, I gave him a 5. I mean,
yeah, he's a goon. He's a real ass goon.
He's a real ass goon. Trademark, market, real ass goon. Put it on an image. Big Blue Goon.
Early contender for the real ass goon all goon list.
Yeah, preseason all goon list.
Absolutely.
But
all
yeah,
right,
man,
so that's our interior defensive lineman.
Plays with his hair on fire. Goon.
And this is going to be our most controversial choice. I think it's going to piss off a lot of people. But again, we are going by what we saw, and we back it up with the data that we have. So whatever. All right, let's go to number 3. Everybody's like, okay, now you're going to talk about the guy that should be number 2, obviously, at number 3, right? Nope. Monty, you want to introduce number 3?
Yeah, might be waiting a little bit longer. This one people might guess. He's pretty highly looked at by like Brugler and stuff like that. Tyleik Williams, interior defensive lineman out of Ohio State, 6'3", 327 pounds. He was a 4-star. He's a true senior. He was a second-team All-American. He was a freshman All-American. He had a 77.2 PFF grade in 2023, 71.8 run defense, 68.4 pass rush, 9.8 missed tackle percentage, 7.8 pass rush win rate, 53 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 5 passes defended. So what I saw from this guy was another guy who was great off the snap. I don't think he's quite to the like elite level that Howard Cross was, but this guy wins with his jump off the snap. Everything starts from there, and he works off that. He comes off that jump with great pop. When he'll beat these offensive linemen before they even get out of their stance, and he brings such a powerful punch that he can get these guys moving backwards, even though he's not the strongest guy in the world. I thought he played with really solid leverage. I thought he played with solid strength. He does have some pushback strength, as much as, I didn't give him, said that he does use it a lot with, using his get off to do it, but I did see examples of it. I watched him versus Notre Dame, and he was giving Joe Alt some issues there,
Yeah.
top pick, gigantic man. I saw Joe Alt at least having to take, foot back to anchor, or even got moved back a little bit at one time. He isn't easily moved, I said, but at the same time, he can be moved. He's not a guy a guy who's gonna sit there and eat double teams, but he's not somebody who gets washed either. I said he can one gap really well. That all comes from that get off. he sets himself up well to shed in the run game. You know, he keeps his eyes in the backfield, keeps separation with his arms, and you know, has a pretty good move to get off him. He always has good awareness of where the running back is. He's really reliable in his gap responsibility. From what I saw, he always, you know, is very comfortable, you know, taking his gap and funneling the run game. He doesn't need to, you know, always be the one making the tackle. You know, it's a little bit different to something we talked about Howard Cross. He's fine with, you know, taking his spot and funneling the run somewhere else so somebody else can make the play. I mean, one thing I saw, you don't see it very often, but a couple times when he was rushing from the edge, I thought he had pretty good hand fighting with space to work. You know, you didn't see it as much inside. You kind of just try to beat people with his get off, but you know, when he had a little bit more space, he was able to keep the hands off him. And I thought he had a good stack and shed in the run game. You know, where the cons are, which are honestly, I didn't have a lot of cons for him. I thought he was a pretty good football player.
That's the story of Tyleik Williams, basically.
Yeah. You know, what I had for him is, you know, once in a while, if, you know, a play gets by him, he's done. He's not running to chase that thing down from behind. He doesn't look particularly quick outside of his initial step. He kind of lacks a counter move. Like I said, it feels like almost the entire game is predicated off winning off the snap. Doesn't have a real pass rush plan. You know, I don't think he has the longest arms in the world. We'll see, but he doesn't really keep his distance away from these guys as well as, you know, some others did. And, you know, kind of what I said, it feels more of a floor player than a ceiling player is what I kind of said. He does a lot of things well, but I don't think he's, you know, he's elite at anything. What are your thoughts on Tyleik Williams?
I think you nailed it. To me, all I kept thinking about watching him, and I told you this multiple times, is he just looks like a solid 3-down NFL lineman. Like nothing, there's just nothing when you watch him that jumps off the tape as being spectacular. But then you also watch him and you realize he makes no mistakes. I mean, he's so reliable. Like he maintains his gap integrity. He's a very good tackler. He knows he knows what he's doing out there. He can stack and shed. He can get off blocks. He can make a play in the run game. He can provide a little bit of push, get in, you know, be a little bit more disruptive in the pass game than sometimes you would expect. He kind of does it all. He just doesn't do it at an elite level, but he also makes no mistakes. And this is the kind of guy, like you said, he's a floor player. Like if you already have a difference maker in your defensive line, and what you're looking for is just old reliable here, right? Somebody just plug next to him and say, you do your job. Don't let the play break down on your end of the bargain. He's that guy, right? He's very steady. I think I said to you, like, even though he's not quite the run defender he was, there were like shades of Dalvin Tomlinson, you know, watching this guy, like just so reliable in everything he does, right? And you know, you love guys like that. You really appreciate players like that on your team because they play every single down and you don't have to take them off the field. They just do everything pretty good, nothing great. And that's the bottom line with him. I mean, I saw no glaring weaknesses in his game at all. Everything was technically sound. Everything was reliable. I can see why he's an impact player. So, yeah, I mean, I was a big fan. Bottom line to me, like I think you had a second roundish kind of grade on him. I'm in there. I mean, I think I would say that he's probably like a top 50 projection, somewhere in the top 50.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
First half of the second round kind of guy. Right now, at least he is. And, you know, grade wise, I think you and I graded him fairly similarly. I had him graded almost exactly like the next guy we're going to be going over. But why don't you go through the numbers?
Sure. So strength, I gave him a 4.
I gave him a 4. I think he displays good strength play after play.
Has a little bit of pushback to him and doesn't get moved super easily. I thought that was a fair one. Leverage, I gave him a 3.
Also gave him a 3. He doesn't show the best, you know, leverage like you see from guys like Chris Jenkins, you know, or even Mason Graham. He's a little bit more upright than those guys, but when it matters, like at the point of contact, he tends to be low man. So I think 3 is solid.
Yeah, and you know, he's a little bit taller than some of those guys, 6'3", but Yeah, I think he has an average leverage. Not again, story of this guy. Nothing to complain about, nothing to write home about either. But the one thing I thought he did well, I gave him a 4 in the jump. I consider giving him a 5, but I just didn't think it was an elite level jump, but it is very good.
I agree. Gave him a 4.
Quickness, I gave him a 3 on quickness. I didn't see him as a guy who moved super well laterally outside of his jump. I thought, once he had that first jump, that move was extremely quick, but outside of that, I did not think he moved extremely quickly.
So I gave him a 4, and I gave him a 4 because of something that I always think back to that Dan Jeremiah said at the end of last year when he was talking about scouting college players. He was talking, I think, about Michael Penix, and he said, once you've seen a guy do something, once he's shown you that ability, you can't unsee it. It's there. And then the question is, as an organization, as a coaching staff, can you coach him to consistently get it out of him? So I saw enough reps where he showed some pretty high-end quickness getting across the line. I'm talking about, again, the Bill Walsh, get off a block and move side to side across the line and make sure you get a tackle. Sometimes looping around the lineman. He showed like pretty nifty speed. So I gave him a 4 there. I think 3 is probably a more fair grade for what he did do, but I saw enough reps that were higher end that I thought 4 was okay to give him here.
Yeah, I just didn't see it enough, but that we don't have to agree on everything.
Yep.
Hands, I gave him a 3.
I gave him a 3.
Yeah, I thought he had solid hands, especially when he could get to that offensive lineman quickly. But again, not great, not a great pass rush plan. Not not a lot of counter moves. I didn't think but he had his hands inside and nothing like crazy bad either. Balance, I gave him a 4. I didn't really see many issues with his balance. I thought he was pretty strong player on the inside of that line that didn't get knocked around really easily.
I agree. 4. So the final 3 grades, Giants fit. I think we both gave him a 3. Like, he would be solid if the Giants decide to get flyer on him on day 2. I think he's a solid pick. Potential, we both gave him a 3. Right down the middle, floor prospect, a little bit upside, not a ton. Goon grade, we both gave him a 2 because, I mean, as good of a player as he is, we didn't really see the monster.
He didn't have that chip on his shoulder when he played. No. He was just a role player. Yeah, and then with like the Giants fit, for example, like, look, I think he'd be fine next to Dex, but I think they're looking for a little bit more pass rush upside than he brings.
Absolutely. All right. Shall we go on to number 4?
Yep. Let's go to the next guy, and why don't you introduce him?
So surely this is where the list is going to finally settle into what the consensus is, right, Monty?
He'll be on here, just not here.
But not at number 4. Number 4, Kenneth Grant, interior defensive lineman from the University of Michigan, running mate with Mason Graham. 6'3", 339-pound, 4-star recruit, true junior. He was second team All Big Ten last year. These were his grades. He had an 80.4 overall PFF defensive grade, 73 on run defense, 78.4 on pass rush. He only missed 6.5% of his tackles. He had a 9.9% pass rush win rate, again, out of nose tackle, which is where he primarily played. He had 29 tackles, 5 for a loss, 3.5 sacks, 1 interception, 5 pass deflections, and 1 fumble recovery. He was number 3 on the Feldman freak list, and boy, does it show on tape. This guy is not normal. He ran a sub 540 at 360. He has a max speed of 18.75 miles per hour. The dude is 340 pounds, running damn near 19 miles per hour. 115-pound dumbbell, 34 times on the right hand, 27 on the left. We went over this last week. 29-inch vertical and 150-pound Turkish getup. He played O-line and D-line in high school. He shot put. He played track. The guy is an athlete. What does he do on tape that I liked? He absolutely is a bulldozer. Like, this is the guy. This is your pushback guy, right? This is what we're talking about, pushback. At the snap, once he gets his mitts on you, he's driving you back all the way into the quarterback's lap more often than not. There's almost no way you can single team this guy and not get pushback. He's massive. The guy uses every bit of his leverage and his strength. He clogs holes. He pushes back the line. He holds against double teams. You're not washing this guy. You're not knocking him off his feet. His anchor is very strong. Now he does get his hands in the passing lanes as well, so it's not like he's just a big run stuffing monster. Like he uses his length, gets his hands in, knocks balls down. That's a skill. You saw guys like J.J. Watt over the years turn that into a real tool and a weapon. And he has a good swim move. He shows his athleticism on tape. It's not every rep. It's not every rep, but you see it on tape. The guy who tested like a maniac. Now there are some negatives. He can be a little erratic. His hands can be all over the place sometimes. He's not as controlled as Mason Graham. His feet are a little bit slow for a guy his size. He can be a little bit, he can look lumbering, getting moving. He doesn't have a ton of pop out of his stance. He's just so damn strong that once he gets there, he's driving you back like a slow sled. That's what it looks like, like a slow sled going backwards. He has to improve his leverage. It's just he's a big dude, and I don't know how he's going to, but he needs to get his pad level lower. He's built like a big guy, so he's kind of a top heavy build that will get in the way of guys with bounce. You see with Evan Neal, so you have to think about these kinds of things. Same thing, leverage will be his enemy sometimes. And I guess if there's a knock on him, and you listed this, for the kind of freak athlete he is, as much as he shows it on tape, it doesn't get the feeling. You don't get the feeling watching him that you're seeing the full arsenal of what he's able to do. He hasn't unleashed it yet. Something to watch. So, what are your thoughts on Kenneth Grant?
Yeah, I mean, we'll go over our grades, and we ended up with a pretty similar grade here, but I was not as optimistic about Kenneth Grant as you were. I thought he was a good nose guard, but like at the end of the day, like I didn't feel like he was a well-rounded player, and I felt like he wasn't using his athleticism as often as I'd like to see. I think a good example of a guy who kind of was like that was another guy from Michigan. It was like a Mozzie Smith. Mozzie Smith was a freak athlete, but I didn't always feel like his athleticism popped off the screen like it should have, and he used it as to be a dominant player. I see a little bit of that here with Kenneth Grant. You talked about all his traits, but I do think he has real pocket collapsing strength. Like that's real. Like he can, once he gets your hands on you, he can just move you. He gets you one-on-one. He can move you right back into the QB, which is a really great thing to happen. You can eat double teams. These are things you're looking for from a nose guard. But things that I didn't like is that he was so slow out of his stance that in pass sets, it felt like if the offensive lineman already started to get back and got a couple of his kick slides in, he would be standing all the way up by the time he made contact with the offensive lineman, and just nothing would happen. When he had a chance to kind of get low and get that offensive lineman before he really got into a stance, he had really good reps. But most of the time, I felt like he was so slow to get to that offense. It was crazy for how athletic he is. Just a really bad get off. And I thought it killed him from being as effective as he should be. He was a little bit better in the run game. In that situation, you have, the offensive lineman coming to you, and he was able to stay low and really, use leverage, use his strength, and kind of clog a gap. But I feel like if he gets a better get off, it could totally change his game. I also like, we talked about it, just like I said, his athleticism didn't pop as much. Sometimes I see it, and you can't, like you said, once you see it, sometimes you can't get it out of your head. Daniel Jeremiah said that, and you can see that's a good example here because there's a play versus Penn State where he chases down their running back from behind, and that's insane for a guy of his size. It looked ridiculous with him doing it, but at the same time, I see him trying to move laterally, and I just feel like he's not moving as quickly. He looks lumbering. He doesn't lose feet or moving slow. So, some kind of rehashing some of the stuff you said, but I'm very pessimistic about this guy still. But he has a year to really show who he could be. I think getting out of his stance faster could really change a lot about how I look at him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, and I think he's a big guy. I don't know how much of that is going to change, but when you're that much of an athlete, I think it can be worked on. Like this is the kind of guy where I don't think he's a great fit for the Giants, and we'll get to that in a second. But if we needed a nose tackle and you had Andre Patterson, I feel like this is the kind of guy where you say, here's a specimen you can work with. And he can fix some of those things like the get off at the snap and the hand placement so he can use his raw power much more effectively. But it's the raw talent here is just undeniable, right? Like this is a freakish talent. I mean, you saw those numbers. What was it? 34 reps at whatever it was, what obscene dumbbell number it was. What was it? 115-pound dumbbells, 34 times on the right, 27 on the left. That's ridiculous. Like the punch this guy has, and you see on film, right? When he gets his hands into your chest and pushes you, you have like no shot. He's so damn strong. So this is one of those potential kind of guys. So let's get into the scoring system here because we talked about the pros and the cons. He is a nose guard. So strength, we both gave him a 5. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, true natural 5 strength. It's not built off leverage or anything like that. Just true fucking man strength.
Leverage, we both gave him a 3. I think we're being generous here, to be honest. But I think you see it enough where we were able to give him a 3.
It's hard because he's so tall, so I try to give him credit for just like he doesn't just stand straight up. It's just sometimes he ends up straight up.
Some guys stand straight up. We'll get to that. Jump, we both gave him a 2. I think we both agreed that he was a little slow off the snap.
And I honestly probably could have gave him a 1, but again, it's one of those things where it wasn't always that, and I know it's there. I know we can have at least a usable jump, but sometimes it's really bad.
We both gave him a 3 for quickness. I think he was plenty quick. Could be quicker based on his athleticism, but enough.
Yeah, it was.
We both gave him a 2 for his hands. This is, I think, grading on a curve. He's strong, but he should show you more for what he has. You expect more usage of his hands to dominate. Like this guy's hands should be able to just absolutely destroy you on chop moves, on swim moves, on push pulls. Like he doesn't show you enough of that. Like for him, push pull should be devastating, right? Like if he really wants to get his hands into you and take you down, he should be able to. He doesn't show it enough. That's something I'm watching for this year, right? Did he develop this year and learn how to use those enormously powerful hands of his to like take advantage of offensive linemen? And balance, you gave him a 2. I gave him a 3. I can see why you would give him a 2. I thought he was a little bit better, but we're kind of in the same place here.
Yeah, the only thing with that is I saw a couple times. The only thing I'm worried about is I saw him be top heavy at times. I saw when a lot of times that's just not how he played. He plays a little bit higher, but sometimes when I saw him get his head over his knees, fell or he looks like he's gonna fall. It worries me. I gotta watch more of him, but it worries me he might be a little bit top heavy.
Composite score, you had him at a 2.8, and I had him at exactly a 3. Basically, I have him at an average NFL starter as a nose, and you have him as a slightly below average NFL starter at nose. Giants fit, you gave him a 1. We have Dex. I gave him a 2. We have Dex. I don't think that matters too much. We both had him at a 4 for potential. That's the athleticism shining through. And Boone grades, you had him at a 2. You didn't see the pathology that I saw. I gave him a 3. I saw enough reps where I thought he was trying to use athleticism to harm people. As long as you're trying to hurt someone, you get at least a 3 from me.
Fair. I just felt like he wasn't using his athleticism enough. But I mean, to be fair, he did chase a guy down the field. Maybe that should have given him a bump up.
I mean, somebody of his size that moves like him that tries to hit you, like he's obviously trying to injure you. So you got to get some points for that. All right, so that's DT4. I wonder if D-Kid is still with us because he was plenty mad at me when I hinted something about tonight. D-Kid, if you're there, show us your rage because it's time to go over DT5. And for those who've been paying attention, there's a name we have not yet mentioned that you're probably shocked by. Why don't you introduce our DT5, Monty? Because he did at least he made the list. You're muted.
Oops.
Start again. No, you didn't. Start all over.
Yeah, I am. So he had to make the list. He's DT2, and some people leave him as DT1. I'm shocked I didn't like this guy as much as I did. I mean, he fits the prototype of the exact type of player I look for.
D-Kit responds.
Yeah, he's here. This is a travesty. I wish I liked him more, but the player is Deone Walker, interior defensive lineman, 6'6", 345 pounds out of Kentucky. He was a 4-star recruit. He's a junior. Look, he's highly productive. He's a preseason All-American. He was 2023 first team All-SEC. He was a true freshman All-American. I mean, PFF score 80.6, 81.7 run defense, 80.5 pass rush, 14.3 missed tackle percentage, a little high, 14.5 pass rush win rate, extremely good, 55 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, 2 passes defended, like incredible stats. He was a high school basketball player, but here's I'll start with the positive. I thought he was a powerful block shedder. I felt that, when he would shed by an offensive lineman, he could do it pretty well, and he could throw him around when he did it. I thought he had pretty good balance. I saw blockers kind of bounce off him. It shows some more explosiveness from more of the interior. He plays kind of the edge and interior, but I felt like he looked a little bit more explosive when he played more inside. He had a really good quick swim move. Swim move. That's probably was my favorite thing about him. I said he was kind of a bull in the china shop. When he got in a rush, he kind of just he just went in there. It didn't always look like he had a plan, but like nobody could stop him. Once he got kind of inside on somebody with his strength and speed, he was just coming down on you, and he was just taking anybody with him. Good quickness for his size. Yeah, solid spin move. There it is. And his I thought his hands were decently impressive. I thought, weirdly, that's kind of how he always won. For as big and fast as he was, he mostly won with his hands and not just, with his strength or his speed. Now, the bad side. This dude stands straight up out of his stance. Absolute. That's why he does not win with strength, because he stands straight up every single time and gives the offensive lineman his 6'6" frame. He's slow off the snap. He is not quick at all off the snaps. He's a guy who does not look like he has a lot of stamina. I constantly saw him with his hands on his hips. I saw him, waiting until the absolute last second to get his hand down. I didn't think he had any strength on his pop out of his stance. I think that's more of a, how slow he was and a leverage thing. I think those are probably related, but he didn't bring pop. He was constantly stalemated. I didn't see him at all get like a pocket collapse push. At least from what I saw, I didn't see teams feeling the need to double team him. I didn't see him really command double teams. So, I felt like he's clearly a very, very good college football player. There is no question about that. The stats speak for itself. But I question how that translates to the next level. I feel like he wins a lot by being 6'6", 340 pounds and being as big and athletic as he is. And he can get away with a lot of stuff that I don't think he'll get away with at the NFL level. I'm not a fan of this guy. I think he also thinks he's more athletic and a better player than he is. He's a former basketball player, and he tries throwing I don't know if you saw this, but he tries throwing those basketball moves when he's like on the field. It feels like he thinks he's Myles Garrett. He like stands straight up and like tries doing like the Myles Garrett like crossover shimmy to get by people. I'm like, who do you think you are, dude? Like he's kind of got skinny legs. I don't know, man. This guy is not somebody I would spend a first round pick on.
We have a very fun dialogue going on between Jabri and D-Kit about this guy, and I agree with Jabri. You know who this guy reminds me of, and I pray to God he doesn't hear this because he'll probably kill me. You remember when you played basketball as a kid in school, and you would just go to the local park and you just start picking random people, and
Hmm.
like there was always that one doofy looking guy who was a foot taller than everybody, and you're like, I'm just gonna pick him because he's so much freaking bigger. I'm gonna make him stand under the rim and throw him the ball and tell him to hit layups. That's who this guy is. Like
Yeah.
he's just bigger than everybody. He's taller. He's just big, long arms, big, tall guy. You know, and then he dribbles, and you're like, wow, like how you never learn how to dribble. Like like you don't know like
Yeah.
what you're doing, or he tries to hit the layup and he like hits it off the like under the backboard. Like he's so sloppy. I'm sorry. Like I know this is gonna offend people who love this guy, and I feel like the consensus around this guy is like so high because it's groupthink at this point. Everybody's like, well, you have to put Deone Walker 1 or 2. You have to put him. Watch
He,
him.
he was an All-American. He has great
Right.
stats, but like
And the
the
hate is
tape.
unbearable. Yeah, the hate is unbearable. He's got chicken legs. For a guy his size, remember, he's got to play interior D line. He has like almost no leg strength. The guy's all upper body. Now, I'm trashing him, so I'll stop. He's strong as shit. The dude is he is really strong. He's got a big, strong upper body. He obviously has freakish athleticism. He has elite measurables. But like Monty said, he stands up straight. How many interior defensive linemen are standing up straight and doing anything? Because low man wins, right? At the snap, this guy is struggling to get down into a 3-point stance. And even when he starts in a proper 3-point stance, his instinct is to stand straight up before he does anything with his hands. The second he does that, interior linemen just get their hands on his chest, and I don't care how big he is, he's done. And you see that play after play after play. Forget double teams. He has no shot against double teams, right? You see him completely get bullied in double teams. He does not beat them. But even one-on-one reps, guys forklift this dude.
Mhm.
They get right under his chest plate. They use his height against him. He doesn't have a counter. They forklift him,
He
and
just stuck.
he's stuck, and they run right. Did you notice this? Teams run right at him, like they're not avoiding him at all.
And they
So
don't double very often.
no, like so
One
it's
guy
like
can handle him.
there's a lot to like in terms of measurables, but you hated BB. I still hate BB, but I don't respect anybody with T-Rex arms playing guard. Now he's a center, but but like he I just don't see a guy who, as a player today, is someone I look at and I trust and say that's going to be a good NFL player. I think the Jordan Davis comp that Jabri keeps mentioning is not a bad one. He's going to
No.
test really great. He's really big. His RAS score will be like 999 because it like focuses on your height and your weight.
Mhm.
But the player is not playing strong. The player doesn't play with leverage. The player is not very disruptive. When he's given a chance to be. Now he flashes. To his credit, there was a difference in the player early in 2023 than the player later. Like as the season went on, he did get better at the things we're talking about. He was a little bit lower in his stance. He was more disruptive and was able to generate more power from his legs, but still he struggled again with some of the things we're talking about. So he's just a really talented athlete. He has a lot of upside potential, but he is a very raw player right now. He looks like, to me, he doesn't look ready to come anywhere near the NFL. And we're talking about guys who are grading for the draft, not for next season in college, but for the draft. So we put him number 5. I'll be honest, we could have left him off this list, and it wouldn't have
Mhm.
bothered me.
No, me neither.
Because there were guys like Walter Nolan, somebody mentioned, there are other guys who could have made this list, but I think for the sake of discussion, because he's going to be discussed as a very highly touted prospect, and NFL teams are going to salivate over this guy, right? They're going to be like, oh my God, I want to get my hands on this guy. He's 6'6", 350, whatever the hell he is. I can do something with him. But we're just giving you our honest evaluation of his game film and his production. And I see Jabri wrote, reminds me of Gregory Rousseau, honestly. Big traits guy, some underwhelming film, but a ton of preseason hype. I mean, that's probably about right. Like, slightly different player, but yeah, I get it. Like
Yeah,
there are
that's
guys
true.
like this. Every year there's somebody like this, right? And then they fall. So I don't know what's gonna happen to this guy. I don't think he's gonna fall, but let's go through our grades here.
Yeah, and let's
Uh,
explain a little bit, with each one why we put there and give some context to each one of these grades and why we picked them.
all right, strength.
Strength, I gave him a 2.
I gave him a 2. He doesn't show it. He's
Yeah,
strong. He's strong as an ox, but he does not show it
it
play to play.
does not have good play strength, and I think that's all tied. That's something. It's unfair sometimes to break these all apart because that's all tied to his leverage, his get off, and things like that, and it's not good. So it leads to bad strength where he has no push, absolutely no push, and he doesn't like isn't a guy who's going to dominate in the run game either. He's a guy who can get held up by one player. So yeah, no.
Leverage.
Leverage 1. The worst leverage I've ever got.
Yeah, give him 1. You can't get anything
And
higher than 1
straight
when
up,
you stand right. Every snap, he stands up like he's staring at something.
He sometimes starts standing up. He just doesn't even get in the stance and start standing up.
He's got to work on that. Jump.
2.
Below average, not amazing, not the worst, but 2. Quickness.
3.
I mean, I gave him a 3. Here, I thought about I could have given him a 4 because he does have incredible lateral mobility when he chooses to use it. Now, this is where I'm going to say something nice before Dekit tries to murder me. There are plays where he's able to shed blocks and he can make a play in the run game where you think, wow, he can't. How did he reach that player? Right? The guy is running away from him and he sheds a block and he takes off and he uses his length to get to people. I think it's more his length that's the strength here. But I have to give him credit for covering ground. So I gave him a 3, but it was really bordering on a 4.
Yeah, and look, I could probably give it a 4 if I was really weighing in the fact that he's 6'6", 345 pounds. If I heavily weighed his size and how quick he is, I could definitely knock it up to a 4.
Hands,
I gave him a 4, so I'll talk about this a little bit. You go ahead and say yours first.
I gave him a 3.
So hands, I thought, there were some parts about his hands I didn't love. Kind of the opposite of Mason Graham here, where Mason Graham we had because he had really consistent, good hands, but he has a deadly swim move. I saw at times in games where at the end of the game I was watching, I'm blanking on the game I watched, but at the end of the game, he was winning every single time with a swim move. I saw him do back-to-back swim moves in the same play. I sent you that clip. He has a very good and effective swim move. He gives a decent push pull in with his block shedding ability. There's sometimes he just gets totally dominated and there's nothing he can do, and that's a lot with his get off and him standing up. But if he's in good position, he can absolutely destroy people with a fast, strong swim move. He has other moves, but that's really it was one of my favorite moves of all the people we watched.
Okay. And the last couple of categories here, balance. I think we both gave him a 3. I won't argue with the hands thing. I get it. I gave him a 3, but I see what you're saying. Balance, we both gave him a 3. Giants fit, we both gave him a 3. Kind of
Look, I mean, if I was going to make an argument why it could be higher, our coach is Andre Patterson. If there's anybody who needs to get he needs to get teamed up with Deone Walker, it's Andre Patterson. So maybe you can make the argument for it, but I'm gonna stick to 3 just because I really didn't like his tape, and I don't know what he brings to your team specifically.
Okay. And then our final few categories, the non-calculable ones, we're talking about Giants fit 3, potential. I gave him a 4 because I do see the upside here. You gave him a 3.
I gave him a 3 just because I don't know how fixable leverage is. This dude is clearly like this dude needs to get put in a wrestling camp or something like that. Because I just don't know with his height and just how poor he is leverages right now if he'll ever really be able to fix it to be anything more than an average player in the NFL.
Okay. And the goon grade. We both gave him a 2. Didn't see that killer.
Yeah, I didn't see a killer. You know, DK here said, based on what I heard, he's basically undraftable. Look, I know we talked about this. I know he's gonna go high. I know that's what people like. I said it to Sal. I've based off tape, I have an early day 3 grade on him. With his tape, that's where I'd put it, just based off his tape grade.
I have a late day 2 grade on him.
So
just based on traits, I think guys like now the reality is he's probably going in the first round or early second. If he shows any improvement this year in some of the things we're talking about, don't kill us, D-Kid and others. Like he's got to show it, right? If he shows it, his stock will take off. Then you're talking about top 10 potential because he has the traits. But I got to see it. I'm not trusting I'm not trusting just what people say he should be. You got to show it to me on film. Maybe he's not well coached. That's a fair point, D-Kid. Maybe he needs a guy like Patterson, but I don't see anything that makes me feel super excited about it just yet. So I'm not ready to anoint him at the level the other guys are who've really earned it with their film.
Yeah. No,
So
I'm with you. I'm okay with being the outlier in this guy. I saw what I saw, and I'm not a big fan of it.
I'm sorry. D-Kid's very upset.
He's very, very upset. If he played for West Virginia, I would be very biased. But don't trust my opinions on West Virginia players. I warn people of this.
Yeah, there's two times you cannot trust Monty when you're talking about West Virginia or on Giants game day. You cannot hold him accountable for anything he says during those circumstances. All right, so that's our
hand up.
that's our top 5. Number 1, Mason Graham from Michigan, easy number 1. Number 2, we had Howard Cross from Notre Dame. That's the controversial one. I'm pretty sure very few other people are going to feel this way. I think we both feel Howard Cross is sort of like kind of a late first round, early second round type grade.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, we both had Tyleik Williams from Ohio State, solid all around player, like early second round grade. Number 4, we had the kid Kenneth Grant from Michigan, probably a day 2 grade, a lot of potential and upside, but a nose, not the best fit for the Giants. And number 5, Deone Walker, we both have a much lower grade on than consensus. While everybody else has him as like a top 20, including Brugler, we have him late day 2, early day 3.
Before we totally move off of Deone Walker, what I think is funny, we talked about this. We're both big fans of the Stock Exchange podcast, and we both did. At least I did my review before even watching their review on interior defensive lineman, and they had him as their number 2 guy. And I thought it was so funny because they said almost the exact same things as we said. They were just like buddies too. And I was like, but why? Because you didn't like, it just seems like it's like we're going off of what he has accomplished and not what the film says, because they raised all the same questions. We said they have the same concerns, but I don't know. We'll see.
All right. We got time for 2 more. We try to give you guys a couple of our guys / sleepers. They're not really sleepers, but they're worth paying attention to. So who's your guy, Monty?
So my guy is the Godfather, Dante Corleone from the University of Cincinnati.
That should make D-Kid happy.
Yeah, 6'2", 318 pounds. He's a redshirt junior, 3-star recruit. I'll pull up his stats from this last year, but I have his stats here from 2022. He had 17 total pressures, 3 sacks, 45 tackles, 4.3 missed tackle percentage, 27 run stops on just 172 defensive snaps. Crazy rate there. 93.8 PFF grade, highest of all FBS defenders in 2022, and he had a 94 run defense grade in that year, which is the highest since Micah Parsons. He did have a little bit of a down year last year with Cincinnati, and he did this offseason get diagnosed with blood clots. So hopefully he'll be okay. There obviously is some concern there with that. Now, as far as his 2023 season goes, let's see. He had an 83.3 PFF grade, 80.4 run defense, 79.3 pass rush grade. So, definitely took a step down this last year, but, really just a really true run stopper, a guy who I really hope can get back to that 2022 level we saw. I mean, come on, how can a guy named Dante Quillione not be a giant? That guy's a giant for sure.
All right.
We
love him. So I have a real sleeper. So Deacon's putting out some great names: Walter Nolan, Shamar Turner. I definitely, Monty and I bouncing around the idea of doing Shamar Turner just because he's going to be playing this week in the biggest game of the week. But I picked a real sleeper here. I think I'm sure you college junkies like Deacon know who he is, but he's not on the radar of a lot of people. But someone I think that's worth watching. My sleeper is actually Aeneas Peebles from Virginia Tech. Aeneas Peebles is a transfer from Duke. Don't hold Duke against him. I'm sorry, Giants fans. But 6'1", 290-pound, truly a 3-tech, and very productive player last year. I mean, his production just like flies. Like when you look at it, he had a 86.1 overall defensive grade. He had a 77 run defense grade, but a 90.1 pass rush grade. 33 pressures, 6 sacks, 3 hits, 24 hurries, 1 batted ball, 19 tackles. He only missed 9% of his tackles. But here's what really stood out. And when you watch his tape, you can see this. When you look at the advanced metrics from last year, he was 9th in the country among all interior defensive linemen in pass rush win rate. He had from the interior, 16% pass rush win rate from a 3-tech position, and a 21.7 pass rush win rate in true pass sets. That is edge territory. Incredible pass rusher. And when you watch his tape from Duke, yeah, he's a little undersized, 6'1", 290, but man, is this guy quick. Like really, like he's a speed player. So, I mean, is he a 3-down lineman? I don't know about that in the NFL. I agree with the Chapman stuff, but I think he's way quicker than Chapman. And he's very strong. And this kid has a pass rush arsenal. You just watch him. He can twist. He can stunt. He does that very well. That's something that if Shane Bowen survives this season, it's something that will be valuable. And he can one gap. He has counter moves. He has good hand usage. The kid is a pass rusher. He's a natural pass rusher from the 3-tech position. So Aeneas Peebles is the guy I'm paying attention to out of Virginia Tech. I think this is a guy who's probably, I don't know if he makes it to day 2, Monty. I think he might be like a day 3 guy just because of the size. Mm-hmm. But this is one of those guys where if he has another productive season as a pass rusher, especially those kinds of numbers, 16% from the interior win rate, 20% true pass sets, those are ridiculous numbers. You have to start paying attention to those kinds of numbers. And when you watch the tape of this guy, you will see how he does it. He wins it with just athleticism, speed, and a pass rushing arsenal. He's an experienced player going into his 5th year. Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech. That's my sleeper.
There you go.
All right. Yeah. All right. Let's give a couple of names. So Rad is here, and he's going to complain about Bear Alexander. Let's talk about Bear Alexander for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Bear Alexander apparently is trying to get himself thrown off USC the way he got himself thrown out of Georgia. So let's talk about Bear. Bear is a freak athlete. He's another one of these Kirby smart, like built in a lab monsters who found a way to get himself tossed essentially from Georgia. Even though he didn't quite get tossed, he left. But he was a problem in the locker room there. Apparently he's a problem in the locker room at USC from what I'm hearing. Maybe Rad will dispute this as an alum who'll be biased. But very talented player as an interior defensive lineman. Just good all-around player, pass rushing, run stopping. But yes, his goon factor is high. He's like a 9 on the goon factor. So
yeah.
So goon will appreciate Bear Alexander just like USC Stan Rad. I liked it too, but this guy he's got some issues and he's got to work through that shit, or he may find himself struggling to get drafted high enough on draft day. I mean, talent wise, you can make a case that he's like an early day 2 guy, but he's got to put it together and not be a total asshole. So
yeah, and also I'll add to that, you need to be more consistent. Like you see elite flashes from Bear Alexander. I mean, he is another guy who has a crazy fast get off and a guy who can shoot a gap and really be unstoppable as a pass rusher, but it's not as consistent as you want it. Sometimes he can just totally disappear. So outside of some of the off-field issues, that's another big part of this for him.
Absolutely. He just wants to win. Yeah, I'm sure. All right. So that's an episode. That's 5 D linemen, our 1 to 5. It pissed off D-Kit. We know we did something right because he really got upset, even though he agreed. I know D-Kit. He's going to go back and be like, he's going to watch the film and goes, God damn it. They're right. But he'll still hate us for it. So that's our 5. Obviously, these things will change. The season hasn't even started yet, so this will all adjust. We gave you our 2 sleepers. Interior D-line is done. We're going to do what should we do next week? I don't even know. We haven't started looking at it. Do we have votes or any input on what position group to do? You guys can tell us since you're here.
Yeah, I put up a poll on X last week, I believe. Let's see what the results were, and some people in the chat can weigh in. All right, I put
CB2s. That's not a bad choice. CBs is not a bad.
So I put up offense. That way we can switch offense to defense. So I put up 4 positions there. I did running back, wide receiver, offensive tackle, offensive guard. Running back got 31.6%. Offensive guard got 28.9%. Tackle got 23.7%. And wide receiver got 15.8%.
These guys want D-backs because we don't have any. They're hungry. And hold on. Hear me out. Actually, you know what? Guys, hear me out. If we get torched week 1 in our secondary, you're going to want to hear about the cornerbacks after that game. So maybe in the episode before week 1, we do a nice, safe offensive episode. And then, we need slot receivers. So why don't we do an offensive category next week, and then we'll do cornerbacks the week after that, because I'm sure you'll be plenty angry if things don't work out on Sunday with our secondary.
Sounds like a great plan to me. So people in the chat chime off. Running back versus offensive guard. Those are the 2 top votes. What should we start with?
Let's hear it. Vote. And vote once.
D-Kit doesn't listen to that.
He doesn't listen to anything. Guard. All right. That's not all right. Yeah. That's very specific. All right. You already voted. So that's still 1 vote, Jabri. Nobody else wants to vote? We just have 2 people voting. All right. He's still voting. That's 2 versus 1. We'll get to 5 votes and stop. Now, all right. You know what? Let's just do. What do we have? D-Kid has voted 3 times for running back, and
why don't you just go ahead and sound off some of our housekeeping here, and we'll see what people say.
All right. Why don't we do? God, he's so angry. I feel like we should do this just to appease him. What do you think?
Do what?
Like what he wants. Running backs?
I'm fine with doing running back. That was our top vote on X, Twitter.
All right. Let's do it because because Deacon's old, and I don't want him to have any kind of major cardiovascular event getting angry at us. So let's we're gonna get a Deacon episode before the season's up. He has to show his face though. All right. So that's it. We'll do running backs. We'll do running backs next week. I promise you, D-Kid. I can assure you running back 1 will not disappoint you.
No, I see no way he will. All
right. That's an episode, folks. Thank you guys for chiming in. We're at the 1 hour, 33 minute mark. That's 1 episode down. Running backs next week. Nothing going on in Giants world this weekend except for a whole lot of bullshit talk. So until we see you next week, make sure to tune in to college football. It is week 1. We always give you games to watch. You know what games to watch. The Texas A&M Notre Dame game is the game to watch. That's the big one. You have any other games to chime in on?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a little earlier, USC versus LSU is going to be a really good one. Florida State or University of Florida versus Miami. Some really good games a week. Those are probably the 3 to really keep an eye on.
All right, enjoy your college football week 1. We will see you guys next week. Follow us. Follow me at Queens_guy. Follow Monty at Monte Cristo, MONTECRI5TO. Follow at He's a Giant Pod. See you guys next week. Go Giants.
Go Giants.